Welcome to the Louisiana Business and Industry Show. And now your host, Tim Johnson.
The Commissioner of the Louisiana Division of Administration is the Chief Budget Officer and acts as the Chief Operating Officer for Louisiana State Government. The Louisiana Legislature completed a special session at the end of last week, and the 2016 regular session began earlier this week. Budget deficits still loom large, and tough decisions are ahead. Jay Dardenne, Louisiana's Commissioner of Administration, joins us when we return on this edition of the Louisiana Business and Industry Show.
Since 1919, we've designed and constructed hundreds of industrial plants, roads, ships, dams, and executed some of the most complex jobs in the world. In fact, our quality and dependability are legendary. Today, the legend continues as Brown & Root delivers engineering, construction, maintenance, and industrial specialty services throughout the U.S. and the world from our headquarters here in Louisiana. We are Brown & Root.
In Baton Rouge, see your Good Neighbor State Farm agent Brady Flavin for your insurance and financial needs.
For over a quarter century, Kelly's has operated with honesty, integrity, and above all, safety. Kelly's features a fleet of quality equipment operated by dedicated, safety-minded employees skilled in land clearing, above-ground right-of-way maintenance, vegetation control, station yard and manned facility maintenance, above-ground pipeline support, and more. Kelly's Industrial Services, where pipeline right-of-way maintenance gets done right.
Consumers and property owners with construction projects can have a successful result or regretful experiences that could have been avoided. Before any construction project, verify licensure of the contractor and check references. Scammers will claim to be insured or bonded, so always check first. Download our app, LA Contractor, from the Android or Apple Store. Visit our website, lacontractor.org, or contact the Louisiana State Licensing Board for Contractors. We're here to help before things go wrong. Hire a licensed contractor. It's the law.
Welcome back to the Louisiana Business and Industry Show. Very pleased to be joined by Jay Dardenne, Louisiana's Commissioner of Administration. Jay, welcome.
Thank you, Tim.
A lot to talk about, right? But before we jump into the budget situation, the recently completed special session, the just begun regular session as we tape here on Tuesday morning, tell us about the new duties of the Commissioner of Administration. What do you do day to day? What are you responsible for?
Well, basically, the Commissioner is responsible for the operation of state government at all the levels. He is the governor's designee on a number of commissions, and, for example, serves on the Bond Commission, serves on the Revenue Estimating Conference, and what have you. But basically, it's the day-to-day operations of government.
It's, as we talked about in the open, that's sort of that chief operating officer responsible for that budget. So you have been a busy man dating back to the day you were named as the incoming Commissioner of Administration, and obviously through today, and will be for some time. Now, I think it's putting it mildly to say that you guys inherited a budget mess. A $900 million plus deficit for the current fiscal year, which ends June 30th. A projected $2 billion deficit for the next fiscal year that you had as we entered the special session. Worst fiscal situation the state's faced in 30 years at least. The special session was called to address those deficits. It was contentious at best. Give us an overview. I know we still don't have the final numbers, but give us an overview of what happened and what didn't happen.
It's really an unprecedented situation for the state of Louisiana to have this magnitude of a deficit, and it comes about as a result of a lot of different factors, not the least of which, in my view, was mismanagement for the past 8 years and relying on one-time money that was not coming back again. For example, this current year budget has $800 million in one-time money. That almost correlates with the $900 million shortfall we're facing. And the special session was designed to try and address both the short-term and long-term challenges, and didn't really do either, unfortunately. The governor laid out a plan that, unfortunately, involve raising revenue. That's just the reality of where we are with the deficit that we're facing. Some legislation passed. The session ended last Wednesday. As we tape this, we still don't know the exact number of money that was raised and where we stand. We'll know that by the end of the day today, because the Revenue Estimating Conference will meet Wednesday morning to assess what new revenue we have to apply toward the short-term problem for the current fiscal year, which ends June 30th, and the bigger term $2 billion problem, which we think is now shaved down to about a $1 billion problem. But that's still an awful lot of money for the state to have to reconcile.
And we still believe, and as you say, we don't have the exact figures, but we believe that the deficit for the current fiscal year that remains after the special session ended is somewhere between 30 and 50, could be more than $50 million. We're not sure, we'll find out. That still has to be addressed, right? You are constitutionally mandated to balance every budget. So we've got to figure out a way to close that gap as well.
That's exactly right. We will not carry a deficit forward knowingly to the next fiscal year. So by June 30th, we will have to have a plan, and the legislation that passed gives the commissioner the authority to make the reductions in the budget that are necessary to make certain that we end the year with a balanced budget. And we'll do that. And it won't be easy, and it will not be without a great deal of pain to the folks who are going to be affected.
We hear, Jay, the voices on both sides, right? You and I talked about this when we taped the radio show last week. Some saying, no, we've got to cut more. Others saying, no, we've got to raise revenue. Generally, the consensus has been, both from the business community and from other areas, that we have to have a balance of the two, right? We've got to do some cuts. You guys have done that. We've got to raise some revenue. Let's talk about that balance a little bit and talk about some of the areas where you guys have gone in and made cuts to state government.
Well, the governor has described this as shared sacrifice, that everybody's got to give something, and that's the approach that we took during the special session. The logjam occurred because there was a refusal on the part of the legislature to even talk about the long-term solution, which is to address income taxes in Louisiana. And that'll continue to be a point of discussion, because we've got to balance the revenue that the state receives, in my view, and I think in the governor's view, between our sales tax and our income tax. And right now, that balance is not there, nor is it the appropriate balance in terms of what corporations pay in Louisiana. That's just the harsh reality that we've got to face. Even the staunchest folks in the legislature, particularly the House, who were screaming that we've got to cut the budget, we're not going to be for any taxes, could only, and I put quotes around this, could only come up with $70 million in cuts to the budget beyond what the governor
cuts, but beyond about the $170 million or so, I think.
That's right,
like
that the governor had already proposed, not to mention some reductions that already took place earlier in the year based upon a deficit that was recognized in November. But those who were saying cut, only amended a piece of legislation to add about $70 million. And of that $70 million, $44 million came from the Department of Education, which would have basically shut down our educational system for the remainder of the current fiscal year. No year-end testing, which would have disqualified us from any federal money we would have had. So completely unrealistic. 44 of the $70 million proposed was not even
so it really was about a $36 million cut that was realistically added in terms of...
And a lot of those $36 million, we'll find, were not even realistic either, and some of which made it into the final piece of legislation that passed will no doubt be vetoed by the governor, which we'll have to make up somewhere else. But it was not a responsible way to approach the budget, and I think that's part of the challenge that we're facing right now is if people are not willing to cut and they're not willing to raise taxes and not willing to do anything, as the governor has noted before, you got to lead, follow, or get out of the way and make sure we can tend to our business for the state.
Got about a minute and a half left in this segment, in fact a little less than that. One of the things that you have said over and over is that you and this administration are going to be honest with Louisiana people, right? You're not going to use gimmicks. You're not going to try to hide things. You're going to be honest and tell the truth so we can have adult conversations. Talk about that a little bit.
Well, what we found is that was not the case over the course of the past 8 years. Representations were made by the administration to legislative committees that were frankly not factually correct, evading giving answers, not providing information that was requested. That's not the way I handle my business. That's not the way Governor Edwards handles his business. We're going to be blunt and honest and truthful, and if the truth hurts, so be it. And that's the way the people of Louisiana, that's what the people of Louisiana deserve, is some candor from their government. We need to reinstill some trust in government and some trust in what's being said by the leaders in this state. So that's the harsh reality.
You know, it's you can't ever solve a problem until you're honest about that problem, and that's what you're doing. We'll take a break. I want to come back and talk about the impact on the business community of some of the taxes that are going up as a result of the special session. We're visiting with Commissioner of Administration Jay Dardenne, and you're watching the Louisiana Business and Industry Show.
Spadel's Florist was founded over 30 years ago. From my mom's kitchen, we have grown into one of the largest florists in this area. There's a sense in our community that you stick together, good times or bad. And oil and gas is part of that family. They're my neighbors, they're my customers, they're the person I'm sitting next to at church. If oil and gas is doing well, all of our businesses are doing well. We are Louisiana Oil and Gas.
For more than 25 years, the TJC Group has been helping industry communicate and build relationships with communities, elected officials, and governmental agencies. We are the leading firm in the U.S. for the development, management, and facilitation of industry-based community advisory panels.
Whether you're building a new facility or you manage an existing business, let us put our community and governmental relations experience to work for you.
The TJC Group, facilitating solutions for business and industry.
It might be one of the most efficient, most effective methods of communications we've ever used.
What if I said that the American dream is alive and well, and that it exists for anyone willing to build it? That the power of a nation does not reside in its monuments, but in the hearts and minds of those who built them, and that the country's greatest heroes also wear hard hats. In today's America, it's not enough to dream about the future. You have to build it. Build your future at byf.org.
Welcome back to the Louisiana Business and Industry Show. Visiting with Jay Dardenne. He's the Louisiana Commissioner of Administration. Jay, as a result of the special session, we know that some taxes on business are going up. We know that the sales tax that that they pay on business utilities that had been exempted prior to this year, 1 cent was, I think, the exemption was taken away last year, and more taken away this year. We've added a penny of sales tax. We've also eliminated the exemption for manufacturing machinery and equipment on those pennies. Now, some of that's temporary, some of it's more long-term, as we're trying to create a bridge to a longer-term solution. Talk about your thoughts on taxes going up in the business community and what you believe, if any, impact that will have on economic development in the state.
Well, first of all, nobody wants to have taxes go up, period, but the reality is that it had to happen in order to balance the state's budget. Taxes on business are going up as a result of this. There's no question, and you hit the ones that'll be going up immediately. We had to address sales taxes primarily because those are the dollars that can come into the coffers quickly. So beginning April 1, we'll start collecting the new penny of sales tax and collecting sales taxes on from businesses on items that previously were exempt and are not any longer. All the economists told us that's what we had to do in the short term to generate the kind of money we needed for this fiscal year. So one of the motivations was what will get us money quickly to get us through the problem in this fiscal year. The added 1 cent applies to all purchases other than food and prescriptions and residential utilities. Those are exempt in the Constitution, but the other pennies now impact some things that weren't taxed previously. You mentioned manufacturing equipment, machinery. That's going to hit business. Business utility taxes was a big item of discussion because business community was concerned about having to now pay on utilities. The reality was we had to have that source of revenue. The idea behind the sales tax increases was to be a bridge, as you indicated, a bridge from where we are right now to where we think we should be to restructure the tax system in Louisiana. That's why we constantly talked about it, and the governor made it clear it was intended to be a bridge, not a temporary tax and really not a permanent tax. bridge us to when we change our overall system. That change was not successful in this session, and it involves some significant changes to the income tax structure in Louisiana. One key component of which would involve a constitutional amendment requiring a 2/3 vote in the legislature and a majority vote of the people. We still are hopeful that will happen this fall, and there'll probably be another special session to provoke a vote on these issues. The proposal would be to remove the ability to deduct the federal income tax that you pay as an individual or as a corporation from your state sales tax, and at the same time allow the excess itemized deductions for a limited number of people who do deduct excess itemized deductions. It would basically allow home mortgage payments, interest, and charitable contributions to be deducted, but other excess itemized deductions would no longer be allowed. As a part of that entire process, we're proposing to change the rates and change the brackets for income tax, both for individuals and corporations, to lower them, lower the rates from where they are now. And this is part of an overall change in our income tax structure recommended by economists and also confirmed by the Tax Foundation, which is an independent, basically conservative-leaning entity out of Washington, D.C. that evaluates state taxes.
Let's talk about that plan specifically from a corporate income tax standpoint. So it would eliminate the ability to deduct from the federal taxes, but it would reduce the overall rates or flatten them out, basically.
That's right. Basically, a single rate is the
6.5%.
Well, the percentage hadn't been determined yet. That depends upon what else is done by way of revenue. But let's say right now we have brackets that are, for example, 4%, 6%, and 8% based upon graduated income. 8% is the highest corporate income tax in the South. We want to get away from that high rate and would like to go to a single corporate rate, whether it's 4.5%, 5%, 5.5%, 6%, we don't know yet, but it would be somewhere in there lower than the highest bracket. And then individual income taxes would be reduced as well, both a bracket reduction as well as a rate reduction. All this is part of an overall plan that would be designed to balance our taxing structure in the state and reform it in a way that most people who've evaluated our tax system would say is true reform.
Part of those long-term structural solutions that we talk about so often. You know, we interview a lot of business people on this show, as you know. You've been on the show, you've been on the radio show. One of the things we hear all of the time from business community is, tell us what the rules are and let's keep them consistent. Give us a stable tax structure, a stable regulatory environment, a stable business climate. We'll adjust to the rules and we'll be profitable around that. I know that's where you want to get to. I believe that that's where the governor wants to get to. Talk about that a little bit.
Well, it absolutely is. And we've been talking in terms of trying to stabilize our budget picture right now because we're in such a crisis. First of all, we have to stabilize where we are, and then we have to commit to restructuring. And we want to quit changing rules from year to year and create a permanent solution that represents true reform. And that's where we want to be. We have some taxes on businesses that frankly, we shouldn't have on the books at all. Franchise tax, for example. Inventory tax, which is a crazy convoluted tax that winds up being paid by businesses, collected by local municipalities, local government. They keep the revenue and the state reimburses the business with a credit for what it's paid. That's crazy. And the state is the big loser there. But businesses who are paying those taxes don't want to see the current scheme go away because they're getting reimbursed, and local governments don't want to see it go away because they're getting the money. So we've got to, that's another solution we've got to address.
Well, this whole idea about what the state taxes and raises revenue for and what local governments tax and raise revenue for is one of these discussions that has to be part of this long-term solution. We got about 30 seconds. Just touch on that real quick.
Well, you're right. We've developed a taxing system in Louisiana rooted in Huey Long's days where everybody had to come to Baton Rouge and come to the Capitol for the money to be doled out. And as a result, we have a lot of taxes collected at a state level that probably ought to be collected at a local level. And we need to move toward allowing locals more flexibility in their ability to raise money and also rely upon them to provide the services because the state does an awful lot on its own.
We're going to come back and talk about some longer term solutions in addition to what we've already talked about. We're going to talk about higher education, workforce development. I want to get into some of those things as well. We're visiting with Jay Dardenne. He's the Louisiana Commissioner of Administration, and you're watching the Louisiana Business and Industry Show.
For more than 20 years, the TJC Group has been helping companies assess their training needs and to develop programs that improve the effectiveness and productivity of their teams.
Training doesn't have to be expensive or complicated. Let us put our experience and expertise to work for you.
The TJC Group, facilitating solutions for business and industry.
It might be one of the most efficient, most effective methods of communications we've ever used.
In Baton Rouge, see your Good Neighbor State Farm agent Brady Flavin for your insurance and financial needs.
What if I said that whatever good things you build you? And that in this economy, sweat never loses its value? What if I said that there isn't a challenge in the world too great for a craft professional with the right tools? And that the steps that lead from where you are to where you want to be can only be built by you. Build your future at byf.org.
Welcome back to the Louisiana Business and Industry Show. Good conversation with Jay Dardenne, Louisiana's Commissioner of Administration. The governor, in his address to the legislature to open the session yesterday, talked about something that you and I actually talked about on the radio show last week, and that is a real review of state governmental agencies. This whole idea of, are we being as efficient as we can be? Are we funding programs that make a difference? I know he's asked you to review every agency of state government. Talk about that review a little bit.
Well, that's one of the challenges of this job that I found most interesting, because I'm a product of the legislature and have run 2 state departments and know that we're not as efficient in government as we need to be. And this job gives me an opportunity to try and make that happen. So the governor's asked us to undertake a review of all the departments. Those reviews are starting today, given the budget problems, asking secretaries and agency heads to come in and tell us about programming. What's their least efficient or least effective program? I want to see some programmatic reductions, not just across the board reductions, that I hope we'll be able to accomplish. Also, there's been a lot of talk about contracts and the number of state contracts, and that's not the be-all and end-all of the state's problem, but it is something that has not been reviewed to the extent that it should be by an administration. And the legislature, this legislature, has taken a pretty keen interest in that, so we'll be looking closely at state contracts. I came in the first week and changed a state contract I was familiar with regarding travel. We've eliminated another contract regarding travel that we thought was just not cost effective and was counterproductive, as a matter of fact. And I want to lead by example, and so the division's going to be doing that, and then we'll ask other departments to do likewise, because we agree that there needs to be a careful review of government, seeing where we can provide the best services we can with the best practices, and not being all things to all people.
Right, government doing fewer things, but funding the things that we do have as priorities adequately and demanding excellence from them. I think the point that you and I have talked about over the years is this whole idea that when you make across-the-board cuts, sometimes you take marginal programs and make them worse.
Well, that's right.
And what we need to be is focused on real priorities, fund them adequately, and demand excellence from them, and that's what you're doing.
It is, and looking at state government's role in the provision of services to the people of Louisiana. There are certain things that we alone as a state are responsible for, like higher education, and like our highway system, our roads and our bridges, with a significant amount of federal dollars that come in. But if we don't take care of higher education, we don't fix state roads in a responsible way, we don't take care of K-12 education, nobody's going to do it. Other things that state government assists local governments with are the kind of things we need to say to locals, maybe this is something you need to take on yourself, but we need to give you authority to tax with the approval of the people or the approval of your governing body, and not have the state be as responsible as it has been in the past for so much funding of local projects.
You know, one of the things that is of concern, obviously, is that as a state, we have defunded higher education more and more significantly than any other state in the United States over the last 8 to 10 years. It's a concern. Now, that's another area of state government, obviously, that we want operating as efficiently as possible. But we've got dilapidated buildings on campus. We're eliminating programs. We're seeing quality faculty leave the state in ways that should be a concern. And I know what a passion you have for higher education. Talk about that.
It's one of the real tragedies of the past 8 years is the defunding of higher education, the biggest decline in state funding of any state in America over that period of time, the highest and most dramatic increase in tuition over that same period of time. So we're out of balance with what the state has to do to fund its colleges and universities, technical schools, community colleges, because it represents the future for the state, the ability to train Louisianians, those of traditional college students as well as non-traditional students who are going back to further their education to prepare them for the real jobs that exist and are going to exist in the growing Louisiana workforce. So we have not done a service to the people in the way in which we've handled post-secondary education over the course of the past 8 years. We want to try and change that. It's going to be difficult to do so in the crisis that we're facing right now because higher education is unprotected in terms of dedicated funding. So we've got to make certain that higher education introspectively looks at itself. The Board of Regents and the various management boards look inward and say, what can we do to be more efficient? What can we do to eliminate some duplication, to provide the best kind of services we can for students, while the state says, what can we do to try and turn this ship around?
About 2 minutes left, so I'm going to hit rapid fire here. Infrastructure, transportation, huge issue. Another one of those areas where we need more investment while we find ourselves in this significant budget crisis.
Well, it's a huge commitment of the governor. For example, the Transportation Trust Fund has to be adequately funded for transportation. We are not going to propose to take money out of it for state police, as has been done in the past. We've got deferred maintenance of billions of dollars across Louisiana roads. We have deferred maintenance in higher education. In the capital outlay component of state government, you're not going to see a lot of growth or a lot of activity there. We're going to ratchet back capital outlay and focus on fixing what we've got. Deferred maintenance on college campuses, infrastructure and transportation projects.
30 seconds, legislative regular sessions underway, best case scenario, worst case scenario?
Well, there won't be a best case scenario for the budget in the regular session because you can't talk at all about tax issues or revenue issues. So the budget we're presenting and the budget we'll have to talk about during the session is not going to be good. It's going to be $1 billion short, which is leading us to, in all likelihood, another special session to try and address correcting that.
We'll see what happens there. 15 seconds, your message to the business community.
Well, the business community is a huge part of Louisiana and always has been, and we want to be fair in the way in which we tax a business community, create some stability, and ask them to come to the table and be a player in what we have to do to get out from under the problem we're facing.
Listen, I don't envy your position, man. I know it's tough. Jay Dardenne, thanks for your time.
Thank you, Tim.
Appreciate you. That's a wrap, guys. Thanks for joining us. Join us again next week at this very same time for another edition of the Louisiana Business and Industry Show.